The universe had a cruel sense of humor, and Alexander Grant was convinced its favorite punchline had just landed squarely on his mahogany desk. He just closed a $1 billion deal, the kind of business that financial news anchors practically frothed at the mouth over, when his assistant, Melissa, walked into his corner office. She was holding a cream-colored envelope like it was an unexploded bomb. "It was hand-delivered," she said, her eyebrows raised high. "No return address, but, well, it looks like a wedding invitation." Alexander didn't need to guess. The heavy cardstock, the ornate gold calligraphy across the front, and the faint scent of gardenias all pointed to one person. He broke the seal, his eyes scanning the words. And there it was. "You are cordially invited to celebrate the nuptials of Miss Juliet Morrow and Mr. Daniel Worth," his ex-fiancée, the woman who had once spoken of forever, and then vanished without a warning, breaking off their engagement with nothing more than a 3-sentence email. He leaned back in his leather chair, the Manhattan skyline stretching out beyond his floor-to-ceiling window. "You've got to be kidding me." Melissa winced. "I thought you'd want to know." "Want to know?" His laugh was a dry, humorless sound. "Melissa, she left me for another man, and now she's sending me an engraved invitation. As a display of arrogance, I almost have to admire it." He set it down on the desk right where the afternoon sun caught the gold ink, letting the memory play out in his mind. 2 years ago, Juliet had been the picture of elegance. Silky blonde hair, a voice like champagne bubbles, a grace that could charm billionaires and charity boards alike. They had met at a gallery auction, and within 6 months, he was convinced she was the woman he wanted to build his life with. Until one Thursday morning, she simply disappeared. No fight, no warning. His calls went unanswered. Then came the email. "Alexander, I'm sorry. I can't explain now. It's better for both of us. I wish you the best." The better for us she referred to, it turned out, was Daniel Worth, a quiet, methodical financier with a spreadsheet for a personality and a family fortune built on shipping. Alexander had run into them once by accident at a work event. Juliet had turned her back. Daniel had just smiled, as if he'd just acquired something valuable. And now, they were inviting him to the wedding. "Are you going?" Melissa cleared her throat. "No," Alexander said dismissively. But the more he thought about it, the more hollow the word felt. It would be the mature thing, the dignified thing, the thing every therapist in Manhattan would advise. But Alexander Grant wasn't known for doing what was dignified. He thrived on making statements, big, bold, memorable statements. And suddenly, a mischievous idea began to take root. That night, he sat in his penthouse apartment, the city gleaming below him, a spilled jar of diamonds, and poured himself a glass of scotch. He imagined walking into Juliet's wedding, not alone, but with someone who would make the entire room stop and stare. Someone so unexpected, so outside of her perfect little world, that it would rattle the very foundation she had built with Daniel. Not another socialite, not a model, not a fellow tycoon, no. Someone completely out of the blue. But where would he find her? The answer came to mornings later, in the form of a spilled coffee. Alexander was at his usual coffee spot, a small, unassuming place tucked between a flower shop and a bookstore. The door burst open and a woman hurried in, her cheeks flushed from the winter wind. She was wearing a mustard yellow scarf and carrying an oversized tote bag stuffed with sketchbooks. The barista, distracted by Alexander's order, didn't see her reach for the napkin dispenser. At the exact moment Alexander reached for his coffee. Got it fast, her cup gave way, the dark liquid arcing through the air and landing directly across her scarf. "Oh my God, I am so sorry," she said, grabbing napkins and dabbing at the stain. Alexander shook his head, half amused. "It's my fault. I wasn't paying attention." He looked up then and he noticed 2 things. Her eyes were a deep, rich brown, and she had a presence that made the room feel smaller, more focused. Not because she was loud or big, she wasn't, but because she seemed real in a way most people he met weren't. "You're Alexander Grant," she said, suddenly. "Guilty. My face is apparently on a magazine in her office. That's a first, she grinned. I wouldn't have pegged you as a coffee spiller. He found himself smiling back. I have my flaws. They exchanged names. Hers was Zara Bennett. And they talked long enough for him to learn. She was a freelance illustrator who lived 3 subway stops away. She had an easy wit and didn't seem to have any interest in impressing him. As she turned to leave, something reckless in him spoke. Zara, he called out. She stopped at the door. This is going to sound insane, but I have a proposition for you. She tilted her head, amused. How bad does it start? I need a date to a wedding. Not just any wedding, my ex-fiancée's wedding. I want someone who can walk in there and not just turn heads, but change the entire atmosphere. Someone unexpected. Her eyebrows shot up. You don't know me. That's the point. She studied him for a long time. And why would I agree to something like that? He gave her the kind of smile that closed billion-dollar deals. Because I'll make it worth your while. No strings. No weirdness. Just one night of being the most memorable woman in the room. Zara's eyes sparkled with mischief. You know this sounds like a bad plot to a romantic comedy, right? Awesome, I'm in. She laughed, but then quickly got serious. But better clothes, though, she said, shaking her head. Are you serious? Deadly. There was a pause long enough for him to wonder if he'd crossed a line. Then she said, all right, I'm in. But if I'm doing this, we're doing it my way, deal. Alexander didn't know what her way meant yet, but as she walked out of the coffee shop, her scarf still damp from the coffee, he had a feeling this was about to be much more than a simple statement at a wedding. And he had no idea how right he was. Zara Bennett was a master of not agreeing to things that sounded like they belonged in a Netflix rom-com. And yet here she was, sitting across from Alexander Grant in the back corner of the same coffee shop where he'd soaked her scarf with coffee 2 days ago, listening to him pitch the most absurd idea she'd heard all year. So, let me get this straight, she said, stirring her tea slowly. You want me, a random person you met by accident, someone you know nothing about, to go to your ex-fiancée's wedding as your date? Alexander nodded, completely serious. Correct. And you think this is to make her jealous, humiliate her, a meticulously planned social strategy in the middle of a wedding reception? That's what it sounds like, she said. But her mouth twitched. I just want to make a statement. The kind of thing people remember. Zara leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms. And you're not worried that I could be a total psychopath? I'm willing to take that risk. The truth was, Zara found the whole thing unusually intriguing. It wasn't every day that a billionaire strolled into her life, asking for a one-off gig that sounded like it belonged in a gossip column. She was a freelance illustrator who lived on a 3rd-floor walk-up with creaky pipes and a brick-wall view. Most days her life was about deadlines, coffee runs, and negotiating late payments from clients who thought creative work meant free work. And here sat Alexander Grant, in a tailored suit, a watch worth more than her annual rent, eyes that studied people like they were chess pieces, asking her to be a grenade he planned to throw on his ex's big day. If nothing else, it would make for a hell of a story. All right, Zara said finally. I'll do it, but we need ground rules. Alexander raised an eyebrow. Ground rules, yes. Rule 1. I'm not an accessory. Don't act like I am. I'll play a role, and I'll play it convincingly, but I'm not here to be arm candy. Got it. Rule 2. I pick what I wear. No hired stylist is going to turn me into some cookie-cutter version of myself. Fine, he said, though she caught a flicker of intrigue on his face. And Rule 3. I'm allowed to have fun with this. Alexander leaned in. Define fun. Zara grinned, slow and deliberate. You'll see. And she shook his hand, an unspoken agreement that sealed the conversation. Alexander wasn't the kind of person who operated in the middle. By the next afternoon, a black town car pulled up outside her apartment. The driver handed her an embossed envelope. Inside was a wedding invitation, along with a note in neat, slanted handwriting. Zara, consider this your mission dossier. We're going to make them remember you. She laughed out loud, and the laughing stopped immediately when she saw the printed card. The Astoria Hotel, one of the most exclusive spaces in New York, where the chandeliers were imported from Italy and the champagne was served in crystal flutes that probably cost more than her laptop. This wasn't just a wedding. This was a statement in itself. The next week was a strange blur. Alexander insisted on a practice dinner of sorts, just the two of them at an upscale steakhouse, so they could rehearse their cover story. "We met at a gallery opening," he began. "True," Zara said. "An art gallery," he continued. "False," she corrected. "We met because you spilled coffee on me. That's the story we'll tell. It's real, it's funny, and it makes you seem human, whatever that's supposed to look like." He chuckled. "And what do I usually look like? A man who uses words like synergy without irony." "Fair," he conceded. They rattled off names, times, and small details of their supposed relationship. Zara had him stumped. "What was the first movie we watched together?" He blinked. "I don't know." "Casablanca." "No," she said firmly. "It was Spider-Man, Into the Spider-Verse, because it's awesome, and it makes us look cooler than we are." He scribbled it down, obediently. Zara had a knack for this. This wasn't just an agreement to attend. It was scripting an entire narrative, one that would feel natural to anyone listening. Alexander found himself unusually impressed. The night before the wedding, Zara stood in front of her mirror holding two dresses. One was a sleek black gown, safe, elegant, unforgettable. The other was a bold, floor-length number in a deep emerald, the kind of color that turned heads in a ballroom. She smiled, tossing the black one aside. If Alexander wanted a statement, she was going to give him one. On the morning of the wedding, Alexander arrived at her building in a chauffeured town car. He stepped out wearing a midnight blue tuxedo, sharp enough to cut glass. For a moment, Zara wondered if she was in over her head. "You ready?" he began, then stopped. She twirled once, letting the emerald fabric flare around her. "Different from the usual crowd." "Better," he said simply, offering her his arm. As she slid into the back of the car, Zara pulled out her phone. "One last thing," she said, typing quickly. "What is it?" "Just sending my group chat to let them know I'm about to crash the fanciest wedding in New York with a billionaire I barely know. They want pictures." Alexander shook his head, but there was a genuine smile tugging at his mouth. "You're really into this, aren't you?" "You have no idea," Zara said, and as the car pulled away from the curb, she leaned back against the leather seat, already imagining the look on Juliette Moreau's face when she saw them walking in together. It was going to be delicious. The second part of the film will be broadcast today. Press the subscribe button to avoid losing us. We love you.